and I got rid of, like, I kid you not, like boxes of books. What's up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. So great to have you here. I'm Emily and I create Christ-centered conversations about topics missing from mainstream messages. So if that's your cup of tea, make sure to subscribe. And while you're at it, if you want to follow along with the behind-the-scenes stuff of my life, you can follow me on my Instagram, which will be linked down in the description box below. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Today's video is inspired by Kendra Christine, who is another YouTuber. She's awesome. Go check her out. I'll link her in the description box below. She just recently came out with a video talking about her boundaries when she reads fiction, and she talked a little bit about nonfiction too, but her boundaries as a Christian for when she will put down a book and not finish it. So I'm going to talk about what my boundaries are as a Christian when I read fiction books, because I have had quite the journey with books in my time. So I'm going to share a little bit about that and some of my boundaries. First, I want to say everyone's convictions are different, so if you're convicted about something, don't do it. Secondly, when I was younger, I was very into books. I read all the time, nonstop. All I did was read books, and that was really great. My parents were like, "This is awesome. Like, we don't have to be like, Emily, get off your phone." It's like, Emily, get off your book. Which is fun. Reading is good. Reading is a good thing. But it can be a bad thing. And so there got to a point where all of this reading that I was doing was actually very bad for me, and I just didn't realize it. This was especially true because once I got into like young adult books, there were a lot of things that were just like, there were two main problems for me. And this is knowing myself now, looking back on it. I've been able to shape my boundaries based on this. The two things that impact me the most are like sexualized stuff. So if it's really romantic, I just don't do well with that. It gets stuck in my head, and it's not healthy. It's not helpful. It doesn't help. I mean, when I was younger and single, it didn't help the way that I looked at men. It didn't help this like desire in me to be in a relationship. Like it just didn't help that at all. And now being in a relationship, like reading all these romance novels, which I don't do much anymore, but if I was, like, that would really impact the way that I treated Hunter, and that would really impact our purity and our boundaries and stuff like that. So that's one thing that I tend to go away from. So if I start reading a new book and very quickly I can see like this is going to be an over-sexualized book, I can deal with some things as long as it's not explicit anymore. When I was younger, I couldn't even deal with like the just saying like, and they had sex and then moved on. Like it was too much for me, but I didn't know that. I was young, and that was something that I learned. I ended up purging almost all of my books because I went through and I was like, is this book helpful to me right now? And I answered no to like most of them. And I got rid of, like, I kid you not, like boxes of books. And me and my sister still talk about it because we got rid of like such good books. But like at that time, it was the right decision for me at that time, because I was like, they were just bad for me, and I knew that. So it got to a point where I was like, I know that these are not helpful for me to have around for my faith, for my being a person. Like, it was not good. So we got rid of a lot of them, and now looking back, I'm like, well, I probably could read those books now, being a little more mature. I think I'm in a different spot now than I was then, but honestly, at the time, I just had to get rid of a lot of books because they were not helpful. And the biggest reason was because they were just really over-sexualized. So yeah, I'll totally put down a book now if I start it and I'm like, this is gonna be really too much for me. I can do that at the beginning. It's a lot more difficult once you kind of get through and you're like more invested in the story, because then you're like, well, I just want to know how this ends. I mean, there have been times where I'll be reading a book And I'm like, I know I can't finish this book. I'm just going to look up how it ends so that I know. And I know that like all the book readers out there are like, oh, I can't believe you did that. But it's true. I had to. Like, sometimes I'll just look up the ending because I'm like, I'm curious. I'm invested in the plot. I want to know what happened to blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So I'll look it up, but I don't want to keep reading it because I know that it's starting to get into my head. Another reason, and this is just in general, my struggle that I have with fiction books is that it is such an escape for me. It's hard because I really like reading, and it's relaxing for me. Like, I can sit outside with a book and eat some chips and read. It's really nice, but it is totally an escape for me. And even if it doesn't start as an escape, what it ends up being is I get to the end of the book a lot of the time, and I'm like, I wish I had that life. I wish I remember, oh my gosh, if you guys know the Maximum Ride series, it's like, it's gonna sound silly, but it's this book about these teenagers who are half hawk. Is that right? They're like half birds. Yeah, they're half birds. And so they have like wings coming out of their back. And so they fly all around and they save the world. And there's like experiments and whatever. It's very interesting. It's like sci-fi kind of stuff. And over quarantine, I was very bored. And so I just was rereading the whole series. And I had to stop halfway through after like 5 books because I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I am feeling like I want to be half bird so that I can fly around and save the world too. Like, it was totally unrealistic. And so some people are like, I deal better with things that are unrealistic because I know it's not real and I can like make that separation. For me, it is so much harder for me to make that separation. Like, I have to tell myself over and over again, like, Emily, this book is not real. This is fiction. This doesn't happen. You have a good life. You have a wonderful family. You have a great boyfriend. You have a wonderful God who loves you and cares about you. Like, it's really hard when you get to the end of the book and you're like, all I want is to be in this fictional world that this author has created. And for the author, that's like great. That's kind of the goal of a lot of books. Like, they want to reel you in and get you to love the characters and love the world that you're in. But for me, like, I just get sometimes really attached to that, and it makes the life that I have seem very boring. So that's like the biggest struggle that I have, and that happens for me mainly with like sci-fi books or fantasy books. I read a lot of like fantasy princess stuff. I mean, same thing if you know the Selection series. Like, I get to the end of that and I'm like, I want to be a princess. I want to be recruited into the king's castle and like all this ridiculous stuff, because like that's not my reality. That might be some people's reality, but like really that actually was not very realistic at all. But it was so like dreamy and romantic and all this stuff, and I just was captured by it. And so that is, I know for myself, a weakness when I read books. I do a little better with mystery and thriller type books because there's a lot of the time I'm like, I don't want to be in this book. Like, I'm fine if people are not murdered around me. I'm fine if I'm not in criminal investigations. Like, I think I'm fine. I like my life. So those ones are more up my alley because I know that I can handle them better, and they often don't have as much sexy stuff in it. So there are some things that I will avoid like adamantly. And one of those things is, what's it called? Infidelity. Yeah, infidelity. So I'll avoid books that are based around a husband and a wife who are not faithful to each other. That just breaks my heart. I can't, and that's just for me, like, I just have a really hard time dealing with that topic. And so I know, like, I'm not going to be entertained or anything. It's not going to be relaxing or fun for me to read this book about something that I like hate so much. So it's stuff like that for me. Those are kind of the boundaries, the 3 that I set up. And especially with that one just about like escapism and feeling like my life isn't good enough because I'm reading these books, like that's the biggest struggle that I have with books. So and that's less so about the specific book and the specific things that are going on in the book. That's more of like how often am I reading these books? Am I just sitting down and reading for 3 hours straight and finishing the whole book? Like, that totally gets me out of my real life and puts me in this book. And so I know, like, I need to chill and read at a slower pace and not read as many books. Like, I could read a lot. I like reading. I could read a lot of books per week, but it's not helpful for me because it doesn't help me focus on and love and care for the people who are actually around me, because all I'm thinking about is like, oh my gosh, what is happening to this girl right now in my book? And I'm like, I remember I was on vacation in Florida with my family, and I was in the middle of reading this book, which I thought was a really fun book, and it was a mystery book, and so I was like, what happened? Who did it? You know, that kind of stuff. And I had to tell myself, like, Emily, if you put a bookmark in this book, nothing's happening. The book is already written. It's fiction. It doesn't exist. It'll be here when you get back. Like, spend time with your family. And the fact that I had to, like, convince myself that the book is not real and to spend time with my family makes me think, like, I should probably stay away from that kind of stuff, or stay away from too much of that. I'm trying hard to be able to read in moderation because I love reading, but I also know that I need to be willing to give that up because I can hold on so tightly to it. And so all this to say, I would really encourage you, if you're listening and you're like, yeah, I sometimes feel that way after books too, or I know that there are things that I shouldn't be reading, but I do because the plot is so interesting. Like, it's okay to not finish a book because you're convicted about something or because it's not helpful for you. Those are good reasons, because the ultimate reality of life is one that involves a holy and just God who makes demands on your life and your time. And so you really have to think, like, what am I doing? Is it holy and pleasing to the Lord? And if it's not, or if there are things that you can do that would be more holy and pleasing to the Lord, like, consider, is he asking you to give something up, or to give something up for a period, or to lessen the amount of times that you do a certain thing in order to better serve him and in order to better serve the people that he has put around you to love and care for. So those are some of my thoughts on boundaries when reading, and some of my experience with reading and how it has had a negative impact on me, and how I'm trying to, work so that I can read books. But I also recognize that, like, sometimes I'll just need to give up a book, and I need to be okay with that. And not that the Lord will ask me to every single time, but I need to be willing to give it up should he ask. And that's the way it is with all things. I mean, you can apply this to TV shows too, which I've had a fair share of, like, I think the Lord is asking me to give up this TV show, but I don't want to at all. But you have to, like, if God asks you to, you really have to. And it'll be worth it. Like, you'll never regret doing that thing that God is asking you to do. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, or at least found it interesting, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe, turn on your post notification bell so you never miss when I post a video. And I'll see you next week. Have an awesome week. Have an awesome life.